Shabbat Shalom, everyone. How are you guys doing today? Good. Well, I'm very, very blessed to be sharing on the Torah portion this week. I'm grateful for this opportunity. This week's Torah portion is Toldot. Say Toldot. And this is it's a Hebrew word which means generations. And it goes from Genesis 25:19 to Genesis 28:9. So we're going to go through this kind of quickly, but this Torah portion mostly focuses on Jacob. In fact, this Torah portion, along with the next two Torah portions, are all about Jacob's life, his struggles, everything that he goes through, and what we're to learn from that. So I'm just going to kind of go through this and highlight a couple of things that the Lord put on my heart. So beginning at the beginning of the Torah portion in Genesis 25:19, we see that the story starts off with Rebekah. Who's Rebekah? Well, Rebekah is Isaac's wife. Isaac is Abraham's son. So Rebekah is pregnant. She becomes pregnant with twins, and the passage says that the twins struggled within her. And during this pregnancy, Rebekah cries out to the Lord. She's like, "Why is this happening to me?" And the Lord gives her this cryptic prophecy. He says that, he answers her and he says that the twins within you, they represent two different peoples that are at war with each other, and the older child will serve the younger child. So he gives her this cryptic prophecy, and it just kind of ends from there. It just sort of, the story just continues to continue on from there. And that'll be important a little bit later. But when the twins are born, we see that the first one comes out all red and hairy, and the firstborn, his name is called Esau. And then the next one was born holding Esau's heel, and he was called Jacob. Now, it's interesting that he came out holding Esau's heel, because this kind of foreshadows things that are about to happen in the story. Not only does it foreshadow Jacob's desire to be the firstborn, which we'll see, but it also tells us some other things. The name Jacob, for example, it actually comes from the Hebrew word for heel, and the name means literally one who grabs the heel. And there's a sort of negative connotation here, like you're tripping someone from behind. Okay? And we'll see this throughout Jacob's life. In fact, when we skip ahead to verse 29, Jacob and Esau, the two brothers, they're a little bit older, and this is what it says beginning in verse 29 of Genesis 25. It says, "One day when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, 'Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted.' Therefore his name was called Edom. And Jacob said, 'Sell me your birthright now.' Esau said, 'I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?' So Jacob said, 'Swear to me now.' So he's like, 'All right, we're going to make a contract. This is legit. It's official. Sell me your birthright now. Swear to me.' So Esau swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright." Okay, so what's going on here? Well, Esau, he's hungry. It says he's exhausted. He's about to die. I don't think he's literally about to die, but he's just really hungry. And he goes up to Jacob and he says, "Make me some of that stew. Give me some of that stew." So Jacob says, "Okay, sell me your birthright." So real quick, what is a birthright? A birthright is basically the family inheritance of the firstborn. It's a double portion of the blessing, the inheritance. So in this case, it would be 2/3. The inheritance would be divided 3 ways, and then the one who carries the birthright would get 2/3 of that blessing, the double portion. But not only was this extra wealth, it also entailed extra responsibility. You know, the one that carried the birthright would have to take care of the parents when the parents are old and all of that. But there's also something else here. Carrying the birthright was considered a huge honor. This was not something to be given up lightly. It was a huge honor to receive this. In fact, it represented the family legacy. So I bring that up because it's a pretty steep price for some soup, right? It's a pretty unreasonable price. Can you imagine going to a restaurant and asking for a bowl of soup, and they say, okay, well, it's going to cost you your family inheritance? The passage says that Jacob gave him some bread, too. I don't know if that was complimentary or if Esau had to give him his spleen or his kidney. I don't know. But Esau did this. It says that Esau despised his birthright, that he didn't care. He's like, this doesn't mean anything to me. I'm going to die. Of what use is this birthright to me? So what this tells us is that Esau has a serious lack of character here. He has a serious lack of character to be able to just give up his birthright for a bowl of soup. However, what the heck is Jacob doing? What the heck is Jacob doing? Jacob is taking advantage of his own family. Contrast this with Abraham. We all remember in Genesis 18 when Abraham was visited by the three guests, and the passage says that Abraham, he ran to greet them, he washed their feet, he rushed, he had Sarah make them some food, and he was very intent on showing these strangers kindness and hospitality. He was representing this heart of love and this heart of service, and these were complete strangers. And then contrast this with Jacob's behavior here. Esau was Jacob's brother. He was his twin brother, and Jacob didn't even have to go out of his way. He was already making soup. It wouldn't have taken much effort for him just to put some soup in a bowl and give it to him. But he used this opportunity to swindle his brother out of his brother's birthright. So we see this grabbing the heel here, right? We see this tripping someone from behind, this manipulative behavior, this fraudster kind of mentality here. And so the scriptures are kind of building up this tension between Jacob and Esau. And we'll see that this tension keeps building, and it utterly explodes in chapter 17. In fact, when we skip ahead to chapter 17, this is what happens. Rebekah, Isaac, he's getting old. He's about to die. He's not able to see very well. And Rebekah hears that Esau is going to receive this blessing from his father Isaac. And this blessing, by the way, as we see in the previous chapter, this blessing is passed down from Abraham, and then this blessing is going to be passed down to one of Isaac's sons. And this blessing is a very big deal. This blessing is a very big deal, this blessing of Abraham. It's the blessing to inherit the land. You're going to bring forth many nations is all-inclusive within this blessing. You're going to be a blessing to the nations. And as we know later in the New Testament, that this blessing ultimately culminates to the Messiah, who will be a blessing to all the nations. So this blessing is like the entire story of the Bible. Like everything in the Bible hinges on this blessing. This is a really big deal. And so Rebekah, she remembered the prophecy that she got when she was pregnant, that the older would serve the younger. And she came up with a plan for Jacob to receive this blessing instead of Esau. And they basically made a plan. She basically made a plan to lie to Isaac. They're like, okay, well, we need to make sure that Jacob receives this blessing, so we got to deceive Isaac so that Jacob gets this instead of Esau. But Jacob objects to this plan. This is what he says in Genesis 27, beginning in verse 11. It says, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall be seen to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing." Okay, so that was Jacob's objection. You'll notice that Jacob's objection is not based on the fact that it's wrong to lie to your father. His objection is not based on the fact that it's morally wrong and deceptive to manipulate and deceive your family. His objection is the fact that his mother's plan has some holes in it. That it's not, there's some issues here that this is probably not going to work. So again, we see that Jacob is demonstrating a very selfish and manipulative character. He's deceiving his own family to get what he wants. I mean, he was being obedient to his mother, so I guess he has that going for him, but still, this is not good. This is not good. All right, so anyway, we all know the story. Jacob, he's successful in deceiving his father, and he gets this blessing. And then Esau, he's very upset that Jacob got this blessing, very upset that Jacob has deceived him twice now, manipulated it twice now, and he vows to kill Jacob. But Jacob still receives this blessing. But this kind of brings up a dilemma. The dilemma is this all-important blessing that the entire story of the Bible hinges on. This blessing of Abraham, getting the land, bringing forth many nations, being a blessing to the nations, and eventually bringing forth the Messiah, Yeshua. How is it possible that Jacob was able to gain this blessing through deception? How is that possible? In other words, how can we consider Jacob's securing of this blessing to be legitimate if he lied to get it? Well, we know that Esau doesn't deserve this blessing. It says that he despised his birthright. Later in the Bible, we learn some other things about how he's just not a very good person, okay? He doesn't really care about his family's legacy. He doesn't really care about being a blessing to the nations or any of that. But Jacob still lied to get this blessing. Jacob was still manipulative and deceptive. So how is this okay? How does God honor this? Well, there are a couple of commentaries that attempt to explain that Jacob's actions are not really evil, all right? So some, they say that, it's coming from a pragmatic perspective. It was done to fulfill the prophecy. His actions were not ideal, but it was what had to be done in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled. Another commentary tries to explain that Jacob wasn't really lying. He was only kind of lying, and a lot of, loopholes in logic, mental gymnastics, if you will, to try to explain this. Well, I don't buy any of that stuff. I mean, let's just be real. What Jacob did was wrong. What Jacob did was wrong. But that being the case, we still have this dilemma, don't we? How does God honor this? How is this legitimate? Well, I think the answer to this lies in the fact that there are two more Torah portions that focus on Jacob's life, and this is only the first one. Jacob's story still has a lot left here. And what happens next is that Jacob, he needs to escape Esau, so he goes to his uncle Laban's to get a wife. And if you think Jacob is a manipulative jerk, wait until you meet Laban. Jacob works for Laban for 20 years, and he gets cheated over and over and over again by his own family. And then finally, Jacob heads back home to discover that his brother Esau is on his way. And the last thing that Jacob remembers about Esau is, oh yeah, this guy's going to kill me. This guy said he's going to kill me. So Jacob's afraid he's going to die. And he's waiting for this encounter with Esau when all of a sudden he starts wrestling with a man all night. Well, it turns out that man he was wrestling with was God. And God blesses him and changes his name to Israel. And after that, Jacob ends up reconciling with his brother. And it's a beautiful story. A beautiful story. So, over the course of Jacob's life, the scriptures kind of paint this picture, this allegory, which teaches us why it really is that Jacob received this blessing. And we can see this not only as Jacob's story, but also our story. What do I mean by that? Well, Jacob, he starts off being a selfish, manipulative jerk. He's looking out only for himself. He's a sinner, like all of us are, right? But he receives this blessing, which ultimately represents the promise of Messiah. He definitely didn't do anything to earn this blessing. Neither have we. After working in the world, he leaves to go back home, and then he is faced with the reality that he's going to die, possibly sooner than later. We're all going to die. Then Jacob has this encounter with God. He struggles with God, and he prevails, and his name is changed. And he's not Jacob the deceiver anymore. His name is Israel. And by the way, that name Israel is the same name that is later given to all of us, later given to everyone that inherits this blessing of Abraham. So in conclusion, this Torah portion is just the beginning of Jacob's story of salvation. In the end, Jacob doesn't receive this blessing by fraud. In the end, he receives it because he struggled with God and prevailed. And that's what we're all called to do. We've received the promise of Messiah. We've received the Messiah not because of anything that we've done, not because we've earned it, not because we're great people. We definitely are not. But we've received the Messiah by grace through faith, and now we are called to struggle with God. Now we are called to work out that salvation, follow him, wrestle with God as new creations.